All right, here we are, the last session of the day. We made it. We are excited for 4 panelists here today. We're excited that you are with us. Kai snapping his picture. Let's get a little selfie right here while we go. It's great to be with you all. We are really excited about talking about Web3 and what it means for enterprise level clients and companies. So real quick, I would just love to hear a little bit about who you are and why you're passionate about what you do. So we'll start with you, Daryl.
Hi, so I'm Daryl. I'm the general partner of Thrive Digital. We are a Singapore-based Web3 technology fund, but we don't just invest in Web3 technology. We actually invest in digital frontier tech, which means Web3, AI, and usually B2B SaaS itself. So I would say that we invest in pre-seed, seed-stage startups. And I would say that what I'm passionate about is really supporting companies who are actually at the forefront of innovations. So one of the things that we're talking about today is enterprises, right? So I think one of the things that we're also passionate about is how can enterprise, adopt Web3 and AI technologies itself, and that's what I like. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So founder of Tank here. We essentially start off as a builders community with founders from foundations, top protocols, right? And we realized that, hey, we have so many resources. Why don't we do something? So now the main business here is being an accelerator and a venture studio. So we incubate projects from A to Z, from research, fundraising, GTM execution to sales. And we help foundations to scale via our marketing solution as well, targeting in various regions like Japan, Korea, Turkey, CIS region, and the rest of the Southeast Asia. And yeah, happy to see more young founders like myself to start to build something, especially in Web3. So hoping to help more of them to venture in Web3. See how it goes in the future.
Thank you, Kai.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 아발란체 블록체인의 아시아 사업 총괄을 맡고 있는 저스틴이라고 합니다. So my name is Justin. I'm head of Asia at Avalabs, and Avalabs is the company behind Avalanche blockchain, which is a EVM compatible blockchain, and I oversee business development and ecosystem growth for Asia. So that's gaming, enterprise, financial institutions, and governments in many countries in Asia. So we have worked with larger companies, like in Korea we work with SK, Nexon MapleStory. In Japan we work with Suntory, Konami, and also SMBC, which is the second largest commercial bank in Japan. Singapore, Alipay and Grab, they are actually settling all their cross-border international payments with stablecoins already. So that was our work. So we're happy to be here, and I think Asia is actually a place where we're seeing a lot of activities around enterprise adoption of blockchain. So happy to talk more details later. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Matt Wang from Certic. I'm the Certic audit partner. And Certic is the largest Web3 security firm. And I began my career at a traditional ICT, the telecommunication enterprise, the Ericsson. And then following that, I began to enter the Web3 industry, first as a co-developer, and for the apps, the layer one blockchain, and also I served for CX services. And eventually, I come to Certic to secure or to safeguard the Web3 industry as a security expert. It's my pleasure to join this panel to discuss the future of the Web3 and enterprise. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, panelists, for sharing that. It sounds like we all share a common interest in enterprise level Web3 adoption. So my first question is around that. Web3, when you first think about it, it might feel like something that's nascent, it's new, it's up and coming. We're going to wait for companies to test it out to see if it works, and then we might decide to adopt it for our enterprise. Tell me why that's a bad idea to wait, and why should enterprises be thinking about Web3 today?
Well, I think about adopting Web3 is just like thinking about adopting any innovative solutions itself, right? It doesn't mean that Web3 is the only thing. It just means that you are at the forefront of innovation and you're constantly ahead of your competitors itself, right? But I understand why people might think that Web3 is not ready. I wouldn't say it's not ready. I would say that it's only ready, in my opinion, for some of the industries right now. I think today we have heard a lot of discussions about the intersection between Web3 and AI, and that's a great topic because we know that AI is advancing really fast, right? And one of the biggest problems with AI is data. And one of the things that Web3 could actually solve that issue is when it comes to training AI models, a lot of large corporations, they are quite sensitive when it comes to sharing the data itself. But with the likes of blockchain, you're able to kind of encrypt the data and share that over, so you don't really have to show that data and preserve privacy and confidentiality. So I would say that there are areas of industry, so that's one, right? And you also have, for example, talking about, say, IP creations, monetizing IP in Web3. That is also an area where I would say Web3 is ripe to start. And I think lastly, it's more towards, I think was already mentioned by Justin as well, like for example, payments in a fintech space, in a finance space, because right now, banks are just charging, traditional finance just costs a bomb. And for businesses to do cross-border payments, that's essentially every single business on earth that, have a global clientele, right? Or any major online tech business itself. So I would say that it might not be ready for every single industries out there, but there are some that are right.
I like that, yeah. So there are certain industries that are ripe and ready for the technologies. And Justin, you were talking a little bit about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts around adoption on an enterprise level.
So I dropped a lot of names here just to get attention. But one thing they have in common is they were not afraid to do proof of concept. So just testing stuff, getting your hands on something with proof of concept, you actually get to experience and learn a lot more and understand and actually end up with a really good understanding of things. And then when you actually integrate blockchain into your business, it's a serious problem because all these companies, these are big conglomerates. They care about regulators. They need to stay compliant with the law. So just going back to Alipay and Grab, already settling all their international payments with Singaporean dollar stablecoins. This is actually not even proof of concept. This is actually commercial use case approved by Central Bank of Singapore, which is MAS. And when we actually get on the table with Alipay, Grab, Avalanche, MAS, you'll run into these questions. Okay, so if you use blockchain for your business, this is really good because this is efficient, innovative, but the problem with blockchain is you don't know who's looking into your transactions. So these governments will ask questions like, this sounds good, but we don't want our financial transactions to be validated by random people. It could be sanctioned countries. And you could be clicking on a phishing link and then, lose money. So that's also a big concern because on like Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, everything is permissionless because anyone can upload your app and it could be harmful. So we actually get into these questions a lot, and we at Avalanche, so we're a tech company, right? So we came up with an architecture that let Alipay and Grab allow some particular validators to validate their transactions and allow only these people to make transactions, allow these group of people only to deploy apps. So we actually came up with technology solutions, and I think that's what Sardik and everyone else here is doing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
The industry has been evaluated very rapidly during the past years. We can see that the data privacy is the key concern that's enterprise to enter this industry. So, however, there could be some, for example, from the Ethereum, that's the research or the roadmap to the privacy, the layer 1 with the ZK snark. Yes, it's a technology side that's to make the private data efficiently run on the blockchain, but not leak the privacy data to the public. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're highlighting a concern that a lot of enterprise level companies are having, which is if we are going to open up our data and share it, how do we know that it's not being used in ways that it shouldn't? Or I guess make the case for transparency. Why should an enterprise level company have to come out and share more of their data, especially putting it out on the blockchain? Kai, I can come to you for that.
Yeah, I just want to touch a little bit more also on the problems that both the panelists mentioned on the privacy, the interoperability, and the regulation itself, right? I mean, for me, as we're trying to bring, I think private blockchain is like bringing a secure group chats to the enterprises and founders. Think we need to set rules. We need to set like strict control over access, and then we need to yeah. This is like the two main things here. So you need like verified applicants to actually get access to these networks, like through the steps I just mentioned there. So imagine like a group of hospitals where they're using a permissioned blockchain, right, to track patient records, hospital data. You need to also you need to let the respective parties to enter the network, through these cells. And privacy, that's one. Interoperability, that's another one. When we talk about data, we want to make sure that we're using the same data language. Imagine like hospital records, insurance policies, and lab reports to interact. So with blockchain, we enable this as well to help these institutions like hospitals do this. And and lastly, I would say the compliance side of things, regulations. Also, we need to ensure the compliance with the local law rules, with the GDPR and HIPAA, for example, where whenever you're posting sensitive information or data, you need to make sure it's put it off-chain. But of course, you can encrypt it, and using cryptographic technologies like ZK proof, for example, then you can say, hey, I am actually qualified without actually having to show my certificate. So to sum that up, right, let's set the scenario with supply chain, for example. They don't have to put everything on chain, right? Let's say if they were to use the blockchain technology. But you can put like a hash of the shipment data to it, and the rest of the documents can be written and stored in an encrypted storage, right? So this way, not only the government can trace it, can track it, but also it protects the, what is it called, the confidentiality of the enterprise itself.
Yeah, so Daryl, you and I were chatting offline before this, and you were kind of mentioning that as well. Why would a company want to kind of explore this new concept?
Because it benefits you in the long term, right? So I was a management consultant before, just like everything else. When I was doing digital transformation work, for a company, it's very simple. If you are not adopting first, and you are lagging behind your competitors, they're going to be one step ahead of you, all right? And to think about large corporations, they don't want to lose. They have obligations to their shareholders itself. So I would say that from a benefit perspective, it's there, right? But I think sometimes it's also up to the people in the industry to evangelize and promote the use and the applications of said technology itself, right? I would say that you can't just, let's be honest here. Even like when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, everybody was like, great, we can use it now. And then enterprise clients were figuring out, okay, how do we actually, can we use this? Can we apply this right away? And it's actually up to people within the industry, within the ecosystem to promote the different use cases before they finally realize, oh, we can adopt it on an enterprise scale and not just on a individual retail user level. So I would say that it's also up to us to kind of promote that.
Yeah, well, so it's interesting, right? Because if you're a smaller company, you can pivot much faster and you can adopt new technologies. And we see this cycle where emerging technologies are brought up by emerging companies who then overtake these large conglomerates. So what is maybe some practical advice you could give to an enterprise level company that sees the technology, understands the value? They have been sold on your evangelizing. They know that it's going to be good. But implementing it seems like a challenge. What can they do?
I would say that I think Justin gave a really good example, right? When you guys were working itself, it all starts with a pilot case study, and this applies to all technology itself. When I was implementing anything from like AI or ERP solutions, it all starts at the pilot level in a single country itself, kind of like a sandbox environment. And once that's tested out, then you do a full rollout, across, how many markets you have across the globe itself. So I would say that start small, don't be afraid. And I think the good thing about, digital frontier industries like Web3 or AI is that the ecosystem is there and extremely willing to help you. Unlike, I would say, solutions which has already matured, they're less likely, this is from a practical standpoint, they're less likely willing to pay the pilot. But I think for the Web3 industry, a lot of the companies here are willing to at least fork out the pilot itself and say that, hey, you know what? You take the risk of adopting my solution, I'll take the risk of paying everything, right? And so to enterprise customers, you don't lose. At most, it's sunk cost for you, which is your time and resources, having a project team set up just to run the pilot itself. But that is something practical, I would say.
Okay, so Justin, you mentioned a lot of companies who are willing to go to that proof of concept stage, right? How do we get it to a full-scale deployment? Or maybe tell us how you've gotten some of your companies to that over that initial hump of getting to proof of concept and then moving on from there.
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about a familiar use case here. So Nexon is a big gaming conglomerate in Korea. If you don't know, their annual revenue is like $3 billion with a B. And they have this IP called Maple Story, which has like 250 million users for the last 20 years. And they had problems. This is the best gaming IP in the industry, but they had problems because a lot of these item sales, characters were being traded in black market, and this wasn't contributing to the company. So they had this idea, if we can actually make this very transparent, also integrated into our system, they can actually see, like a growth of revenue. So they actually came up with this idea, and they did a lot of proof of concepts, due diligence, technical due diligence, and they ended up with Avalanche because we had a long time of consultation, and we figured they actually needed their own blockchain to handle these massive transactions. And they had, because gaming is also a regulated industry, they have geographical limitations. So we reflected that in constructing their own blockchain for just this game, right? And they just launched about 2 months ago, and it is currently the biggest gaming IP. And everyone's very happy to see this character with like levels over 200 being traded over like $20,000 US.
Wow.
So that's pretty insane, and it's happening every day, every minute.
That's incredible. And man, sometimes I think we don't realize that this isn't happening in the future. It is happening now. And you mentioned regulation. Matt, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about what can enterprise companies do around regulation and making sure that we are staying compliant?
At current time, that there could be some regulation landscape we observed, especially for example the stablecoin. That is a hot topic recently after the Genius Act passed, and there are some compliance regulation just come out from various across the globally. That's from, for example, the MS and the Hong Kong MA and the other authorities as to regulate the standard to issue the stablecoin. And for us, the strategy that we have do more other than the audit. For example, we can all know that the stablecoin is just a type of token, crypto token, and the audit is not very difficult. But from the life cycle of the stablecoin, from the issue and to the circulation and in a loop, that there could be something we can do that, for example, you were involved with the custodian key assessment and as well as the regulation that we could prepare for the issue to the regulator, and we can be the bridge we can be the bridge from the issuer or from the Web3 players to the regulator, and to give them advice and to get feedback to how to make this happen.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up as well, because it's important to make sure that we are staying on top of this, and it's great to hear that there's so much happening there. We were talking earlier a little bit about IP and transparency. Kai, I'd love to hear a little bit about why transparency, for one, and when it comes to IP, is there something that we can say to put enterprise-level companies at ease?
Yeah, sure. So funny thing is also quoting my one of the project incubated by us as well. So we actually just hosted a party years later as well. They call Mofu. They're the second IP after Toho, which is 100% owned by Toho, by the way. The IP holder for Godzilla as well. Although they own a lot of IPs like Jujutsu Kaisen and the rest of the animes, but they don't fully own those IPs. So Toho was thinking, how can we build something that's 100% owned by them, and give full transparencies to the holders as well. They want the holders not to just see the IP, they want the holders to feel the IP, right? So through blockchain, you see the transparency of what are the, let's say you mint one of the NFTs by Mofu, for example. You can actually track where these IPs going, whether to merch or to idols or to movies or whatsoever. So I think blockchain comes comes with a very big responsibility when it comes to delivering that. So yeah.
Daryl, do you have anything else to add on top of that?
I think when it comes to IP creation, it's more about monetization. At the end of the day, this probably people have heard of this, like read, write, own, right? Well, what is ownership about? And that's about how do you monetize asset these days. So it's not just applicable to say IP, but it could be any real world asset itself that you would want to tokenize too. So it changes the way people see ownership, right? And can people not just be a consumer, but as a participant, but be part owner as well. That's kind of like what Web3 is trying to change the game on when it comes down to, say, IP creation or other types of asset tokenization.
So ownership is kind of a central pillar when it comes to Web3.
But I can give a little example for the audience to understand better. So as enterprises begin to get known to blockchain, right? So we can expect more enterprises to make use of smart contract and whatsoever. So in the future, we'll see something like NFT-based event tickets, and then on top of the incentivization, we can say, hey, you can actually have a resale royalty for those who are holding an NFT-based tickets itself. So these are one of many use cases that we can do in the future.
What about internally for employees working at the enterprise in terms of having ownership over their own IP? Right now, if you work for a company, technically whatever you invent, whatever you create is property of the company. Does Web3 and decentralization solve for that?
Welcome to the country of IPs, right? So there's a major K-pop company that's launching their own Avalanche EVM blockchain in a couple of months. This is public information, so I can talk about this. So when it comes to K-pop and IP, I think also, like you mentioned monetization, but monetization is based on engagement, fan engagement. So blockchain actually enables and increases this experience of fan engagement. For example, let's say you're a fan of this new K-pop group, right? And let's say they have 7 members, but they are releasing first single with 5 members. Now you can actually vote with ERC tokens. So every vote counts, and you can vote multiple times, say. Let's say a vote counts, one vote is like $1. And when the vote is about to end, you can actually spend $7,000 to actually, make your muse make the debut in the first single. So this is a new source of revenue for K-pop industry. So this is one example of how IP can be enhanced with blockchain.
Fascinating. So if I understand, the first album is released with only 5 of the members. Does that mean that you get to vote the 2 who don't make it on the album? Or what was the...
I would say 5 out of 7 who will make it. I mean, you can
I
vote
see.
for the first 5.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a survival, but
So 2 of them are off the island.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Do any of you have maybe an example of what that might look like from an enterprise level?
When it comes to the ownership, or
Yeah, or in terms of working directly with clients, is there a way to move beyond, we want raving fans of our product or our services? How do we offer these Web3 services in a way that might help them to better engage with our company and feel like they own a part of what we're doing?
I don't think we're there yet, but that seems to be tokenizing equities itself. But there's no point doing that because you can just buy, public equities itself. But I think it's more towards, can you change the way people engage with your brand? And I think there are certain companies already starting to do that. And ticketing is one, merchandising is one. So those are the areas where you can start engaging with your consumers itself. Because one way you can think about it this way, right? The traditional sense of you being a consumer as a participant is you just buy stuff, right? And that's it. It's a one-way experience itself. But what if you could be part of the engagement itself, right? There's a two-way transaction now. So it's not just you spending money, but you could get something in return, or it can be part of something bigger itself, right? I think Justin mentioned of MSU is one, right? But imagine that for all games, right? And that's the reason why games was used is because it has always been one way, and of course, not surprisingly, there was a huge black market back then, right? So people were saying that, hey, since the market already exists, there's just no avenue for people to kind of do it in a proper way. Why not we kind of make it so? Right, so entertainment, I would say, is one of the biggest one. I think Kai also mentioned, right, with Toho, and there's also other major IP companies who are trying to do that, because entertainment's the first one that you will have loyalists of fans who will be willing to engage and re-engage with the IP itself, and not just from a consumer perspective, but now they're able to participate and be part owner of it. Yeah.
I also have one more use case that might be really interesting, because Suntory is the whiskey brand. I don't know if you drink whiskeys, but like Hibiki, Yamazaki are high-end, very expensive whiskeys. And they're actually tokenizing all whiskey bottles on Avalanche. So what they're doing right now is, so every whiskey bottle has a paper seal, right? So they're now replacing the paper seal with NFC chips. So what NFC chip does is when you put your phone to it, it executes something. So it executes an NFT as a proof of ownership. So this is boring stuff, right? But NFC has developed as a technology. Now you can actually make it execute two functions. So when you actually break the NFC and rescan it, it mints an NFT as a proof of tasting. So Suntory, as a really, really old traditional company, never had access to where and when their bottles are opened. So for the first time in history, for Suntory, they now know where, when, and where their bottles are opened. Let's say we sold a bottle in Tokyo, but it's actually opened 2 years later in France, Paris. So now they can allocate more marketing resources. But these are really genius ideas.
I do hope that that idea is sparking some ideas for how you can do that at your enterprise. Let's get back to data here for a moment. Curious what you see are technological barriers to rolling out this technology. That's open for anyone.
I think when it comes to Web3 adoption is, for enterprises at least, is trying to understand the technology itself, right? Like what is the ledger, right? And how does it actually work, and what is possible or what's not. But I think the challenge is actually coming up with the use case, right? If you realize the entire conversation that we've been having is the use case are slightly limited right now. But that's because that's the limitation itself. So if we can think of other ways of adopting blockchain, I think that's where it's limitless in terms of what we could do.
So it's like one part informational, informative, and one part creativity. Are we willing to experiment and try and fail and continue? Which I think you've shared some great examples of companies who are willing to take the risk. They're willing to move into proof of concept. So I would love to hear where do you see, we understand that Web3 is still in its nascent phase, but where do you see in the next 3 to 5 years are the opportunities for enterprises?
From an investment perspective or for adoption itself? Okay, I'll just start with adoption, I would say, for enterprises is tremendous, right? I think it was interesting that Justin mentioned about tokenizing the bottles itself, but I think that's more from the tracking perspective. And tracking is one, right? And in fact, I think supply chain tracking has been implemented across. In fact, most major corporations have already used blockchain for supply chain. In fact, that's how I got into blockchain, implementing it for the Rolls-Royce company. But if you're talking about, say, tokenizing assets as well, that opens up a whole lot of avenue because, I think cross-border payments or even, companies where they traditionally have, for example, let's say vessel management. It's actually Fractalize, one of the companies that I backed. What they do is they basically take vessel management, which traditionally have really long payment terms of 180 days when they start going out at sea, which means that the moment you leave port, you have to start paying, but your clients only pay you 180 days later, right? So what do you do itself? So can you actually tokenize your assets or your contracts so they can borrow against it itself, right? And this simple use case is actually applicable to majority of industries where they have traditionally long payment terms itself, and it basically opens up cash flow and stabilizes your working capital. So I would say that that's one area that we're seeing a lot of evolution on. I think the other one is definitely on the data side itself, right? Kai gave an example of hospitals sharing data, and I think that's not just hospitals. If you look across, it could be any company wanting to share any type of data to AI companies, to each other, to different networks itself, and that would be something that is ever growing, because if you realize data is something that's not really shared, but it should be, right? I don't want to go to like a hospital or hotel and have to repeat myself or share the same kind of information again. So I think these two are the
Please fix
areas.
that.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Kai, go ahead.
So just to quote Daryl, we're not quite there yet. Still very new, right? So we're seeing a lot of absurd ideas of play to earn, and my previous project was doing vape to earn. Like, these are new ways that companies are trying to do in order to get data from the youngsters, right? For vape, for example, you put RFID chips in there, calculate your pulse, and then all the data to be put on chain, and there'll be more demands from the data suppliers or data buyers, something like that. So the whole flywheel is there, and it's very new and very fresh. And of course, it doesn't make sense for institutions at the moment, but down the line, what I see is that solving more localized problems would be something interesting as well. Let's say Vietnam, for example. There are a lot of problems with the farms, with the rice farms, for example. What we can do is probably, do more DeepIn stuff there. Maybe the farmers can run more nodes on the soil, on the weather itself, and then to solve problems with irrigations and pest problems whatsoever. So yeah, and it can also be accelerated with AI models as well because of the data scrapped from the DP models, which is Web3 essentially, aka crypto. Yep.
A great example. Let's keep with this question. Justin, where are we going to be in 3 to 5 years?
So I think we're going to see a lot of collaborative efforts across companies, across industries, because we are basically redesigning data points here. So when company A and company C wants to work together, all the data points they have internally are not directly shareable right now with the old IT system. But with blockchain, we're actually redesigning data points in a way that every data at every company is immediately transferable, composable, because everything is just ERC20 or ERC721. So we're seeing a very simplified and standardized form of data for the first time in history. So we're going to see, if you had a whiskey of Suntory NFT, you'll be given free skins in MapleStory, like in no time. So that's the future that we're seeing, I think.
Yeah, that interoperability is next level. That's great. Matt.
Currently, I think that the blockchain is not capable to hold so much massive data because the performance is not high enough. Take the Ethereum, for example, there's only 14 TPS. So I think the one way that's in the short term that it will to scalability for the blockchain to improve their throughput. For example, to about thousands of TPS. At that time, I think there could be massive adoption of the use case that will be built on the blockchain. The second is that we can see that the data privacy friendly. Yes, this is also a way that the community or from the company that to employ the emerging technology. For example, I mentioned that the ZK Snark to all the ZKP that Certica has also take place or take the to put the formal verification on the ZKP, and which is also granted by the Ethereum Foundation. I think that's a very good example that's from the community and the audit or the security firm to collaboration to make this shift to bring the ZK friendly to the enterprise users. Yeah.
Wonderful. In the last minute that I have here, what is one word that you would use to describe this moment as it relates to Web3?
Enlightening.
Let's keep trying.
I'm calling him out for 2. You can have 2.
1, 2, 3.
Collaboration.
Keep building. Yeah.
Wonderful. That is it for this panel. We want to thank our panelists for being here, and thank you for being here as well.